Well, so here we are in Halmstad, and the break finally happened. One of the cav units that was kind of holding the Swedes off was destroyed. Now the Swedes pursued it off the map, so in terms of units not on the map, it's the same value. Problem is their leader went off the map. Now I forgot they had another cav unit here under that leader, but it's in rally orders. So it can't intercept, and without a leader, it's not going to get any actions. So it's providing basically no defense whatsoever. Ashenberg went forward and charged up close to this infantry from the rear. The infantry fell into Hedgehog successfully. That's the reserve, as it were. It's now just been kind of neutralized. Their back end's open, but right now there's nothing that can be done. That's got 3 full activations, and really kind of isn't in shape to make another assault yet, but it does really weaken the position that the Danes are in, and they're going to have to consider what they can do. I think they still have to trade shots with the Swedes. Alright, speaking of those Swedes, they have the next activation because they have the highest orders. So bad news for the Danes. The firing along the line probably favored them slightly, but not terribly much. However, when they tried reforming this unit in a couple of different ways, they got smacked the first time by that cav and driven back, and then they were able to reform, but now there's this gap for this other cav unit, which is in rally formation right now. It's got to get to charge to do any real damage at this point, unless these guys try to move or something. We also had this trying to rally and took fire, like a -8 to the die roll. But because of the big 10-siders and the effect of everything, a hit was formed. Luckily it didn't kill the commander-in-chief, but it did drive that unit into below its effectiveness strength, and so it dropped from morale shaken to routed and broke, and now we've got 3 units against 2 in that front line, as well as this cav threat. It doesn't look at all good for the Danes. It looks like their army's just about gone. So that's the end of the 14th turn, and the Swedes have 2 units routing. The Danes only have 1, but as I said, the Danish line, their main line is these 2 infantry units, and it's just destroyed. They have a cav here facing the wrong way, with the King of Sweden sitting on a pretty healthy cav, ready to deal with that. They've got a cav back here, which is kind of screened by this. These guys were unable to move out of rally formation, which is sort of the one break, because this is not that great for the Swedes. However, if their artillery here, it can't see this, but if it tries to climb up this hill, it can. If this unit breaks, it can see across there. Alright. Well, here we are on turn 15, and the Swedes started things off with their charging formation of cav, pulling it back, trying to get it into command and trying to get into a position where they could reform it. Well, this is a bad day for the Swedes, because on the next activation, one of them Danish cav commands went and managed to kill the king over here. Yeah, it's a dumb place for the king to have been. You know, I got problems with things like that, right? Anyway, that's probably enough to make this a Danish victory. So those who've thought that I only favor the Swedes, well, they can now see that it's actually just I favor defense, and I kind of knew that. It was a low odds attack, actually. It was, I think, only +1, +2. and it ended up with an elimination. So it wasn't really that risky a move by the Swedes, but it was definitely a worthwhile one for the Danes, and we can see what happened. All right, so that's after 15 turns, with the young Swedish king badly wounded or dead. Looks pretty bad for Sweden at this point. The Danes have largely rallied. Their infantry line is holding the Swedish line off. The Swedish cav has failed in its overall task. Got a couple of units back here, but they have not succeeded in completely disrupting the Danish line. And the one Danish cav here is holding off this other cav wing. So even though the numbers looked bad for a long time, now it's beginning to look like the Swedes have lost a pretty major battle here. So that's the end of the 16th turn. We saw a bit of fighting going on, definitely. The Swedish infantry line was wiped out, just trading shots. They were outnumbered, and that's not an unreasonable thing to have happen. The cav couldn't move, but Ascherberg's cav didn't really manage to launch an attack, but they managed to get slammed in the back by the last unit of the right cavalry wing, which was positioned over to the left, and destroyed it without any loss to themselves. So, before I come back and count with the count of points, which we know this is going to be a major Swedish loss, I want to take a moment to talk about the way I play and why the Swedish king was caught dead, or whatever. It's a matter of, I'm not going to try to optimize points in a game. I'm not saying that I'm going to do... I don't feel like I try to do foolish things, although some of you probably note and say, that's just idiotic. Well, to some extent I'm playing a certain amount of role-playing in this, and that's always the case in a war game for me, or almost any game, to tell you the truth, because it's the story that's going on. And I just do not believe that the Swedish kings at that time were cowardly. I actually don't much believe in being particularly cowardly with any of my leaders in this game, or in, say, the great battles of history, or most games. I will put leaders on the line unless I feel that that didn't match the time period at all. And in this case, well, you know, it was a horrible event and all that, but it's not like, without taking some risks, it wasn't a close battle anyhow. We see the losses, and they were about even, and to tell you the truth, in this scenario, the Swedes actually needed a significant edge. So taking a little bit extra risk, once that point was reached, didn't seem unreasonable to me. I'll be back with the point count and any other last thoughts I might have. Okay, so the Danes did not make any attempt to leave the board. They also made what use they could of the defensive terrain. Point-wise came out 110 to 67. The Danes getting 110 points for Swedish loss. Oh, I didn't count artillery fire. A little bit more for the artillery. The one gun that they had went, I think that's 5 extra victory points. Anyway. By the points for this second scenario, we were looking at a marginal Danish victory if that gun counted in. And with the leader, with the king not there, and it slipped down to a decisive. So it was going to be a close battle no matter what. The Swedes were trying to push it to a better position, and if you take the 30 points that they got for the leader away, they'd still be at 80. Now the 5 points for that gun that I didn't count in is what puts it up to the marginal victory. So what we see is, what looked like a hopeless Danish position. It looked like they were going to be crushed at one point. Somewhere around the middle of the game, I felt like they just were hopeless. They've turned it into a decisive victory through the loss of the king. But it would have been a victory anyway, just because they maintained their forces. And even if they had taken less, they had taken a little bit more losses, their command would not have surrendered under those circumstances. The Swedes were unable to cross the river. They didn't really make an effort to, but they couldn't get the command. That would have been how many points for that? If they had managed that on the last turn. That would have been a 40-point swing, which would have been a big, big difference here. But they didn't manage to get that either. So, yeah, we're looking at, 30 would have been 80 points. So, yeah, I mean, without crossing the river, which they could have done had they not been in receive charge. But they couldn't get out of that, and they just could not swing this cav across to deal with it. I didn't realize there was that big a risk in play, actually, for the Danes. Alright, I'm going to wrap this one up. I had a lot of fun with this one, actually, even though I dragged it out a long time, because, I don't know, I'm just having trouble focusing on a lot of things. I'm not sure what I'm probably going to push something else in between this and the next scenario, Lund, which also looks interesting, but I'm kind of in the mood to play something different. I'm not sure what. I just don't really feel like playing something tactical at this moment. Okay.